And we're live with another episode of State Smash Podcast. Today we're joined by John Vibes, social media manager at the Free Thought Project, The Mind Unleashed, and Police the Police, a community project. All three pages that I pretty guaranteeably like the content of relatively regularly. Like I see very few times that the content on those pages does not meet at least one of my requirements for furthering liberty. But just some housekeeping to get out of the way. There are links in the description. There's a general link on how to support this effort with various methods that some of which are free, some of which are not free. To support me and what I do, if you appreciate what I'm doing. And I'm going to discuss three of them. One of them is Liberty Mugs, which is a company that sells mugs that are sure to piss off your coworkers and start the process of waking them up. There is Brave Browser, which is an ad-free, tracker-free browsing experience that's designed to save you time off your life that you would spend waiting for the damn pages to load with all those overloads of ads, and also save you money from all the energy that you waste loading things that you're probably not going to click. So give that a try. It supports the show to use the link that's in the description, and I very much appreciate any of you who want to do that. Also, there's a tab extension called Crypto Tab, and you can click the link for that, and that lets you use spare CPU power through your browser to mine cryptocurrency as part of a cloud pool with several other people, and you can invite up to 10 and make a passive income of up to $32,000 according to the way they advertise. So let's test this and see if they're really paying out. So you can join that by the link in the description, and feel free to use any of the shirts or any of the other support links in my support the show link. But that out of the way, John does the social media management for the Free Thought Project, Police the Police, and The Mind Unleashed. He also does Brain Paper Publishing, which, if I'm correct, is a book publishing company. Free Your Mind Conference, and the Good Vibes Promotions page. So why don't we start off before we get into sort of shop of the subject? What made you start to trend toward anarchy?
Well, just to clarify real quick, I write for them websites. And I am an editor on those social media pages, but I'm not the person who does all the work on scheduling and the memes. That's Jason Bassler and Johnny Liberty. I got to give them credit for that.
Very cool. Hey, Jason and Johnny, keep up the good work.
Yeah, and as far as an anarchist, it's really weird, man. I've really been like this my whole life. It's, you know, ever since I was a young kid, I had issues in school. I had issues with my parents. Anybody who told me what to do, I was a weird kid. I was known as a bad kid. The only time I would ever really participate in school is when I was arguing with my teachers about how worthless everything that they were teaching me was, or how it was wrong. Um, and I wasn't really intelligent about it, though. It was just like I had a rough situation and I did not get along with authority, so therefore I was always cynical towards it. But I didn't like intellectually understand what I felt. And I think I started the first time I saw the A with the circle around it in like middle school and heard that it meant anarchy. I was like, all right, yeah, I like that. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know that there were 8 million different kinds of anarchists that believed in different things. And then when I was around that same time, actually, around middle school, it's when I moved from Philadelphia to Maryland, and I got AOL, and that was my first connection to the internet. And at the time, one of my major interests, I wasn't really interested in anarchy. It wasn't really something I thought about. It was just like I hated authority, and I liked what I heard about it. But my major interest was UFOs and aliens. I was obsessed with that stuff. So when I got AOL, that was all I looked at all day long, was, alien stuff that people were posting on the internet. And that kind of led me down some of the conspiracy rabbit holes. And then there was,
Yeah.
yeah, so then when 9/11 happened, I was kind of already, you know, hip to all the, William Cooper and all that kind of stuff that was out there. And, that was kind of how high school was. But at the time, once again, I had not had many really intense spiritual experiences. I was very cynical. I was even into Satanism. And that was when I was starting to understand a little bit more about anarchy, but I was drifting in the anarcho-communist direction because I was very, I grew up poor, so I was real bitter at rich people. I thought that they were the problem. So that was my direction. I was really into conspiracy stuff and kind of a commie without calling myself one because I realized that communism was a government and I didn't like that. So then, I got out of high school and weird stuff happened where I ended up in this position where I was throwing raves. And then the cops, they kept on trying to shut me down. And that was really how I found my voice. That was how I started speaking out. And, because I realized I had a platform with my, music stuff anyway. And I wasn't a DJ or anything. I just booked them and, booked
Yeah, you list on your
rooms.
page that you were a rave promoter.
Yeah, that's what that's what they call the guys that, they'll book the venue and then hire the DJs and put all the stuff together. Uh, and I did retire from that officially a couple of years ago for multiple reasons. The scene changed and I well, of course I was funding all my parties with selling drugs too, and I quit doing that. So once I quit doing that, it really was not a viable venture anymore.
Right. Well, I mean, because if you lose your base investments, then you can't run the capital. So
Yeah, exactly. And that was a conscious decision that I made when I released my first book. I realized like, hey, I can't have 1 foot in the black market and 1 foot in in activism. I have to choose one. And I think that the black market is a form of activism. So people who are out there doing their thing in the black market, I always say, respect to you. You don't have to get out there and be a loudmouth because you're going to put a target on your back. So you do your thing as you're part of the movement under there. But I started to realize that my part was being a voice and I had to leave that world behind. So now I could kind of talk about it.
well, and on that level though, you probably also had a lot of stress from that because it can't be like the stereotypical drug dealer image isn't large scale. It's the guy who sells like from his back pocket. But if you were doing it to fund rave promotion, you were probably doing the very stressful form where you've got to know a shit ton of people and like constantly have run-ins with the cops. So
Yeah, it was a really, really crazy, scary lifestyle. And actually, that is the topic of my next book. So now that the statute of limitations are up, I actually finished writing the book and everything. All the crazy stories, all the illegal stuff. The names are changed of the people who don't want to be identified. And, I'm going to be putting that out once I find a better way to distribute it than I have been doing with my other books.
well, I mean, because you run a publishing company, right?
Well, yeah. It's more of like a I kind of help new authors self-publish themselves. I
Okay,
don't
so you're like a liaison.
exactly, yeah. Um, so I don't actually print the books. I don't have a relationship with the printer. I just over the years learned how to self-publish my own books, and I've noticed that a lot of people out there were having trouble with that. And it actually is not that difficult once I kind of explain people through it. And when somebody comes to me asking me to publish one of their books, through this, company. Basically, what I do is I walk them through the process of self-publishing. I tell them how to do it. I tell them how it's done. And then I say, okay, I can do this for you for a very small percentage, which is like 15% or something like that. Most publishers charge like 70%. So I would charge like a very small, 15%, and I would just do all that work for them. Or
Yeah, that
they
sounds like
can
a good service because a lot of people are looking for like how to get into the like self-publishing market and avoid all the corporate censorship. So
exactly. And I would even give them the option also of doing it on their own if they wanted to and keeping the money. And I also say that like I don't keep you in a contract. If you want to leave at any time and publish on your own and not send me my finder's fee for helping you out, whatever. You know what I mean? Uh, and that kind of philosophy comes from an experience that I had when I tried to publish my first book when I dealt with a guy. He wasn't like a corporate publisher, but he was a con artist basically who was basically doing the same thing I am right now, but being very dishonest about it. He was self-publishing books, but he was actually acting like a publisher, and he was telling the authors that he was a publisher, and then he wasn't paying nobody nothing. And there was a whole bunch of issues with that. Since I don't believe in the legal system, I never went after him legally. I just changed the title of the book and I changed the cover and I just released it myself. So,
well, that sounds like a good way to solve that problem.
yeah, exactly. And he was trying to sell the old book for $30, so I just put more stuff in it and made it $20 and put a new title on it.
Well, okay, so on that level, what do you think about IP?
I am completely anti-IP, and that's a lot of the motivation that I had behind doing things that way. Because, well, first of all, the guy had me in a contract, but he breached the contract by not paying me. But at the same time, I had to think like, I gotta live, the stuff that I'm speaking, and I'm not gonna sue this guy and send cops after him and get in a court after this shit. And I feel like the route that I went probably worked out better for me because I would have just ended up in court paying a bunch of lawyers to get like $100 out of the dude because I'm sure that the books weren't selling like freaking Harry Potter. You know what I'm saying? So now this way, I didn't have to pay any money and I solved the problem. So, this guy, unfortunately, he might be out there screwing other people, but I did make a little bit of I made a bunch of noise when the whole thing happened. So hopefully, it kind of scared people away if they were going to get involved with them. But yeah, I don't believe in IP.
So, like, it's interesting that you should bring up that he might be going around and screwing other people over because um, there's a concept that gets regularly panned, especially in science fiction, where um, humans will start rating each other. And I'm wondering what you think of a system like that, where humans are rating specific other humans.
It's interesting because I have heard both positive and negative perspectives on this. And obviously, the whole Black Mirror thing and the similar system that we see in China, where the government can, shut off your access to, financial services if you have a problem with the government, or they could shut your phone and internet off. That obviously is the nightmare scenario that a lot of people are afraid of. But I do think that there is space for some kind of voluntary reputation system. Not a system that punishes people per se, but a a system that lets people know about you. Because personally, I have used how do I say this? Um, I feel like I have accrued a lot of goodwill in my life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Um, and it would be nice to be able to um, monetize that or turn that into some kind of social capital with a reputation system like that. And in the situation of this shady business owner who was screwing people over, that would, he wouldn't get his phone shut off. He wouldn't be cut off from food. He would just kind of have a review from me on his reputation thing saying, hey, I'm an author and I dealt with this guy and he's a scumbag. I
And are
think,
you sure that nobody would attach something like that to it? Like, for instance, the YouTube demonetizations, like I guess you could call it scandals lately. One of the things that they found out was that um, advertising in general had rating systems, and that rating system was not like for videos, so they didn't have to publicly disclose it. But the rating system was for advertisers to get content demonetized, but they would also like not front page things because an advertiser might be on the front page, and they would also not like allow the video if it was extremely against their content policies to be seen at all, and they would disable comments and subscriptions and likes on channels. And so, I mean, that's just a really microcosmic example of how this could go. And I just, I mean, while that necessarily isn't necessarily the subject of the call, I am interested. If you think that sort of people would start to manually attach things to something like that, it might not be inherent to it, but that it might like grow from it later because people decide to, like open source kind of shit.
yeah, I mean, I think that all depends on what kind of society we're living at the time and what direction it's going in. You know what I'm saying? Because you take YouTube as an example, it's not necessarily the CEOs of YouTube who give a shit, um, who care about shutting a lot of these alternative media pages down and stuff. Most of it's coming from government pressure,
Right.
and with a lot of these tech companies, all these back doors that they have to put in, I don't really think a lot of them are doing that voluntarily. Of course, there's some of these companies who have a revolving door between government regulation agencies and their jobs at the boards of these companies and stuff like that. I do understand a lot of that stuff goes on, but still, it is. I lost my train of thought, man.
Well, you were talking about like YouTube demonetizing alternative media,
Oh
and
yeah,
then
yeah. So if sorry, you jog my memory. So if we have a society that is not trying to control everything, then that kind of thing I don't think we should worry about. But under this kind of society that we live in right now, when we have a government, we have all this stuff, I don't really have much trust in any kind of reputation system. If
right.
we're talking in theory in anarchy land, then I probably would think that there could be a lot of cool uses for it, but not in
Well,
the
yeah, and
society that we have now.
right. Well, and in order to get, and I always sort of tell people that they fall into a trap when debating anarchy because they insist that the same sorts of mentalities would exist in anarchy that they would in statism. And I argue that in order to get to anarchy, those mentalities would very likely dissipate and necessarily so as a precursor to getting to anarchy. I would say that anarchy isn't possible if they're just going if the commoner is just going to start up a state again.
Absolutely, dude. I that actually is really the premise of the first and second book in the Conscious Resistant series that I did with Derek. Um, We
Derek who?
need Derek Bros.
Gotcha. Yeah, for the audience, because they might not know who Derek is.
Yeah, I totally forget sometimes that we're on the radio when we're talking. But yeah, so the um the first two books I did with him in the Conscious Resistance series was basically just this idea. A, a, a part of like the anarchy revolution has to come through a evolution of consciousness because that's how the whole thing is going to happen. It's not going to happen through us, you know, rushing the gates and having a revolution and killing the masters and placing a new one in, as you just said. Our society is like hooked on this government like a drug, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it needs if you were just to flip a switch and take it away all today, I think that we would have a lot of problems, and I probably wouldn't pull that switch.
Well, we would have a
Um,
lot of very small governments cropping up for sure.
Exactly. We need to get people to the point where they are emotionally healthy enough to understand that government is not necessary. And I think that that is what is going to bring the revolution that we need. I, yeah, exactly. That was the general idea.
So, I mean, on that, if we did go to a violent revolution area, which I have a video on my channel talking about the Smith Act, so I'm not gonna like quote advocate it. I'm not gonna not advocate it either, though, because I think that that's letting the state control my tongue, but I'm not gonna advocate it openly because I think that essentially that's a really good way to get my channel shut down, to get all the voices that I have come on here off, because the Smith Act essentially says that you can be stripped of your citizenship if you advocate violent revolution, or if you spread and disseminate materials that advocate violent revolution against a government like the United States. So I'm
When
not
was
going to
this passed?
I forget.
Is it
I'll link.
recent or is it like old school, like Sedition
It,
Act shit?
it's old school. It's been around. Um, but like I'll link that to you, and if you want, you can write an article on it or something. But essentially, yeah, the Smith Act is pretty bad stuff. So I'm not going to advocate it, but what I am going to say is I think that if that happened after the vast majority of people like uh understood self-ownership and everything that springs from that, I think that that might be fertile soil for a positive anarchist society to grow from, but it would have to be the vast majority being anarchist already and then taking out the power structure violently, if
Yeah.
it was going to happen that way, because otherwise there's just going to be another one very shortly.
Yeah, nah, absolutely. And I mean, I really think that it wouldn't even have to come down to that. I mean, people would just stop paying their taxes and stop obeying the laws and living their lives. But there is a whole lot of property that the government holds. But then again, if all the people that were working, you know, uh, to guard everything that the government has, then they didn't believe in it anymore, then it would just be open up to homesteading, you know?
Sure.
Um, but my concern about a violent revolution breaking out in America right now in 2018 is a couple months down the line, this place looking like Syria is today.
Right.
You know what I'm
Well, and
saying?
and not to mention the fact that like the kind of person here who would have a violent revolution against somebody like Trump is just going to install somebody like from their side, because it's all
Yeah.
polarized bullshit. That's I don't
It's going to
like
be some tanky Marxist or whatever, you know?
right. Yeah, and I don't like the majority of Kanye West's music. The only reason I have Yeezy is because it was free. So but like if he can spark this kind of outrage just for saying that he's not a Democrat, um, I think that that really shows the kind of state the country is in. I think it puts a magnifying glass on it. I wish, it didn't take people like him to fucking cause this conversation to start, but I'm glad he did, because I think that people need to realize the gravity of the polarization, and realize that if they're willing to disown people over bullshit politics, that they'll probably not end up in a much better situation than the one that they already disliked, if the situation gets better at all, which, I'm a cynical pessimist and I believe it wouldn't get better.
Well,
Go ahead.
well, I mean, since we have been kids, like things have only gotten worse. With every president, there's just more wars, there's just more laws. The only thing that we're winning is the drug war, really, and that is, thank God to the drug dealers. And I guess we're starting to win the financial war thanks to the hackers.
Well, yeah. Well, and okay, so part of the chat right now, it's saying, this gets back to my lifelong question: what if that point never occurs? The majority is always seeking a master. They always want to be ruled and force their rulers on us. What do you have to say about that?
Well,
Because I have my
that kind
answer.
of ties into what I was just kind of starting to get at, was that we need to make it impossible to be ruled over. And I think that cryptocurrency is a good example of that. And I think that in the next couple of years, we're going to see it put to the test. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
oh
And
yeah.
alternative media is another example. They're trying to shut it. Right now is a testing time for alternative media, because we uh, the old media was like one of the primary mechanisms that they had for mind control, and its power has dwindled a lot over the years because people have taken matters into their own hands. So, I'm a big proponent of agorism. I think that we should do whatever we can outside of the law, outside of the system, to free ourselves in ways that makes it impossible to be ruled. And another example that's coming to my mind are the 3D printed guns, with Cody Wilson and the Wiki Weapon Defense Distributed, is the name of it.
Yeah, I had an anti-war veteran on for I think the first episode of this podcast that I'm starting, which, by the way, I'm submitting tonight. If y'all want to catch it on Google and iTunes, you can shortly. But essentially, he wanted to really emphasize that since veterans aren't allowed to have, quote, legal firearms, you can make one at home with the ghost gunner, and he showed the audience his, and he said it's relatively easy to do, and that it's probably one of the best things for a potential revolution.
That's awesome. And I will make a point about the what if we never get a majority. Um, in the many years that I have been paying attention to this, I have seen an exponential increase in interest. I mean, I used to walk around and I used to have to hide my thoughts when I went out in public. Now I could just straight up say something that was incredibly controversial like 10 years ago, something that people would look at me like a flat earther for saying. And I could just come out and say it in public, at a party, whatever, and everybody just nods their head, yup, that's the situation. So I think that people really are waking up. It's just, when you look around, it's daunting.
Yeah. Well, and like that's on a public level, but like really the revolution of consciousness might be brewing, because a lot of people, especially Hillary voters, who realize that the popular vote and getting the numbers in doesn't really, matter if they redistrict properly. So I mean, Hillary voters this year were like, well, the Republican voters during the Obama administration, the Democrat voters under the Bush administration. I mean, there are frauds that you can expose, especially like if you're willing to dig, and if you're willing to go like back to history that people have forgotten about. Like if you want to talk about the corruption of the Bush election, you can talk about hanging Chads, right? And so there are a lot of ways to reach people, and I think that the more people are willing to talk about that, and the more people of different varieties are willing to start looking into it, I think that's the better. I think that's the reason they want this division, because if you can keep people on their track, their life is on rails and you can do whatever you want to them. We have to get off those rails and make our own path, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that I think is the solution, because it's not trying to steer this ship around at all. Like it's about making our own way and trying to do that. And especially the way to wake up all these mind control slaves that think that this government is necessary is to prove to them that it's not. You know what I mean? All these issues that they're so concerned about, the example that's thrown around all the time is the roads. Who will build the roads? If we unfortunately, there are a lot of government barriers in the way, a lot of red tape, but there are places where we can actually provide services and show that the government isn't necessary. And charity is a big way. The more that people like us get involved in charitable stuff, it it makes our cause look way better, and it correlates the two. Like there is a direct, when you see an anarchist feeding the homeless or doing something like that, there is a
And getting
direct
arrested.
correlation. Yeah, and getting arrested, that's even better. But yeah, there is a direct correlation between their beliefs and what they're doing, what they're trying to show to you. So you have the anarchist providing the service that the government isn't. And the more that we can do that, that's how we get people to turn around.
Right. Well, so here comes the question. How do you get people to do that?
Well, I think that people are in a lot of cases, and I used a couple examples as far as the Bitcoin, the alternative media, or crypto. I shouldn't use Bitcoin maximally, but yeah. So alternative media, what do they call them? Mutual aid groups. Any time that there is a government roadblock in the way, setting up community gardens, doing things like that. Even if we look at it's actually happened quite a bit in the past couple of years, but I remember 10 years ago, the issue between organic foods and GMOs and stuff. You were a freak if you talked about organic food. Now,
Especially raw.
yeah, exactly. Now it is the hippest thing. And in this time period, if you were a person who wanted to, uh, you know, try to bring that message to people, and you had the ability to start a business, you could start a business that sells that. And even like my co-author Derek Bros, he didn't necessarily have the means to create a grocery store like Whole Foods or something, but instead he knew how to garden. So he started this business with his friend where they went around and set up community, or not community, they set up organic gardens in people's backyards who were too busy working to do it and didn't know how to. And, they would drive around the city to their different clients who were off at work doing their thing, and they would tend to their gardens. And that was their thing that they did to get that idea of organic food, growing your own food in the consciousness of their neighbors. So just little things like that. It all depends on what the specific issue is and where your skill set is and how you can apply it. And especially if it's somewhere where the government is lacking, which is pretty much everything they do.
Yeah, well, and lacking in what way? Because I do like to make a distinction that they're not incompetent or stupid. If they were, they wouldn't be growing an international global criminal cabal. It takes a lot of intelligence to do that, and it takes very little to say that they're stupid, because essentially all you're saying at that point is we surrender. You're saying anarchists and the rest of the country is too stupid to beat these dumb people. So I mean, like, how would you say that the government is lacking to the common person without basically ceding territory?
Oh, well, I think it's pretty easy. because they intentionally half-ass the services that people actually need and give a shit about, and then they spend all their freaking money on their own budgets, their statues, and their missiles, and they send some scraps down to the table to keep the commoners thinking that they have these services. Meanwhile, the services are totally shit because they're just half-assed PR schemes. That would be my
Yep.
answer.
And so how would you expose somebody to the PR scheme?
Well, I mean, you look at any example and you could go back as far as Al Capone, who had soup kitchens in Chicago before anybody knew he was a gangster, you know what I mean? And that was a part of what he did to keep his image clean. Hell, when we were throwing raves in the basement of old church in Philly, we used to do all these food drives and charity stuff. And yeah, we gave a shit, but we did it to keep the cops off our ass. So it's the same thing with the government. They are a criminal organization who they're waging wars across the planet. They have billions of dollars that they take from all of us. It's a system of enslavement that's been happening for hundreds of even thousands of years under different names and different, varieties. But um oh man, I keep on losing my train of thought. I gotta stop smoking
Well,
so much weed.
no, I mean, get sativa heavy stuff. But you were talking about the PR, and you were saying that, charities are a good way to expose people to that.
Oh yeah, yeah, because it just shows you like how much better that we can do with such limited resources. Like the government has billions of dollars and you have the bottom of the barrel whenever they do anything nice for people. An example is in Hawaii a couple years ago. I'm pretty sure it was Hawaii. A couple of neighbors got together and did like I don't know what the number was, but it was probably like hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of road repairs in 7 days for free because their road was messed up. So that just shows you like the potential of what we could actually achieve if we just voluntarily put money into the things that we wanted to do with our society instead of having some centrally planned organization lording over us.
And then, I mean, like that guy who built stairs for his local park, and then the stairs got torn out. And his stairs were higher quality than the ones that they put there. That's a pretty good example, I would say.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Stuff like that. I mean, those stories are big when they happen. They really resonate with people. And the more that that happens, just the more it throws it in people's faces. Because when they see people just, on the news out protesting with signs, yelling at the government, or if you got agent provocateurs throwing stuff through windows, I don't really think that does much to change the hearts and the minds of the people out there. And that's what those things are supposed to do. So if you think about it, these stories where people come and pick up the government slack, that is intentionally there because the government intentionally sucks, then that will definitely go a long way to making people see that it's just a PR scheme.
All right. And so to that level, um, first off, I do want to say that the stories are fantastic on the Free Thought Project, and I've been auto tweeting those stories for a very long time now because I think that people, especially since Cop Block shut down and my auto tweets for them were no longer rolling out, but I think that people seeing a constant barrage of the truth, I think that if enough people started doing that, I don't think people would isolate. I think people would start to broaden their horizons manually. I think it would take some time, and I think it would take some, effort to get the market saturated. But I think if enough people started to just share one or two articles that from alternative media sites, that the illusion would fade rather quickly.
Yeah, and I mean, really, I do, and maybe I'm more optimistic than some people, but I really do see that happening, and I've been seeing that happening over the past couple of years. We aren't fringe anymore. Our beliefs aren't fringe anymore. Um, I feel like there's more and more people out in the world that I'm running into who think exactly like me. And, they're old people, they're young people, they're rich people, they're poor people, they're from all different nationality and color that are on this wavelength. And there's more and more of them that I'm running into. And I think it is because this culture that, I don't, this culture that has been being put out there by people like us for since way long before I've been doing it. So, for the past 20, 30 years, it's been slowly creeping to the point where it is starting to become mainstream. And that's why all these social media companies are trying to put a lid on it, or, the government's putting pressure on them to put a lid on it, because it really is starting to affect change. And that's why we got to fight harder now more than ever.
Right. And so what would you recommend to a starting activist trying to spread the truth? What sites would you recommend? What sort of avenues would you try to approach it from?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Well, of course, I would definitely recommend my site, but more than that, I really am a fan of people getting involved in Steam It. I think that it is not just Steam It, but the whole community around it, and all the other satellite sites and everything. I think that of course, there are some issues with the whales and all that, but overall, the philosophy that most people have is way more free than you will experience on Facebook. And there are communities where you could learn about homesteading and cryptocurrency, alternative media. And it's one of those things where you could organically connect with the people that are kind of in tune with what you're thinking. Even with the Free Thought Project or the Mind Unleashed or whatever, we still have our specific bias, you know what I'm saying? And it aligns with us 100% of the time, but it might not align with you 100% of the time. So I think that finding a wide variety of sources is probably the best way to go, and I think that Steam It is the best place for that. Another suggestion that I have is something that me and Derek Rose have been pushing a lot recently, and that's the idea of freedom cells. And, this can be tough for some people who feel alone in their community, and there aren't really many other people who are into this kind of stuff. But they have, various apps and stuff. I think there's one called Nextdoor, and there's a couple of them listed on the freedomcells.org website where, you can kind of connect with like-minded people locally. And freedom cells are groups of people that meet together on a fairly regular basis. Maybe one week they'll do a workshop on, gardening or something like that. They'll keep in contact with each other, and if somebody gets in trouble with the cops, everybody else can go there and record or try to help them out or whatever. If there is a checkpoint locally, the 8 of you or whatever number, 8 is like the ideal number, but how many of you can go and try to warn people about the traffic stop, or the checkpoint, stuff like that. So more information you can find on freedomcells.org about that. But that is one of the things that I think is really cool. One of the ideas that I've been pushing a lot recently.
Very cool. Okay, so a few questions, well, a few things from the chat that maybe you can respond to, and there should be more relatively soon. I just blasted this on Facebook again, but Finian Cornelison, who, by the way, is my first patron on Patreon. So y'all can join him and be one of the cool kids supporting my, anarchy, whatever, if you choose to. And I would definitely well appreciate that. But he says, Cell 411 is good for building networks, um, and also that there were plenty of roads before government got involved.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that is Cell 411 is a really good one, and that can also, I believe they also have a some kind of thing where it you could like record cops in situations like that, and it'll go and record on their server. So even if the cop tries to smash your phone, it'll still be there.
Yeah, sort of like people recording on Facebook Live.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. See, I think they made that before Facebook Live was the thing.
Yeah, and additionally, he wants Diva Windblood wants people to know, build the tools, lead by example. Good ideas don't require force, but they can almost be like a force for change in our minds.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I totally agree, and it's up to us. You know, we can't rely on politicians, and I think it's kind of a wasted effort to get elected. If people want to use that as a platform to educate people, then uh, so be it. But that's not something I'm going to do.
Yeah, and additionally, um, how would you advise the average person talk to a Democrat versus talk to a Republican right now?
What do you mean? Strategies for talking with both sides?
Yeah, well, because they have different tacks, and I have my own personal approach, but I'm interested in what yours might be.
Well, it's really kind of, you know, I don't want to be generalistic and boil both sides down, but you kind of find that the main value that people on the right are attached to are independence. And the one of the primary values that the people on the left are attached to are compassion. So I am I'm down with both of those values. You know what I mean? Those are values that I am into independence, and I'm very into compassion also. So most people listening are kind of probably generally on that same page. So you could kind of tap into issues kind of based on those values, and you could read people like that, and you could try to find common ground and bring them into our circle through their values. You know what I'm saying? Be like, oh yeah, voluntarism really values independence. If you're talking to a right-wing person, you don't have to put it in terms that are that obvious. You know, you could kind of be a little bit more clever with them and maybe walk them into that conclusion on their own without coming out and saying it to them. And then you could talk to somebody on the left and you could say, yeah, I'm very compassionate for all these people overseas who are getting blown up by these bombs, and that's why I'm against taxes. Really, it's not because I hate poor people. It's because I am compassionate about these people overseas who are getting bombed. You know what I'm saying? Of course,
Yeah,
taxation is theft, but that is not really the angle that they are going to go for. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, sure.
So that
Especially
that
since
would be
most
my
people are
advice.
fine with it, even if you say it's theft.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Like, and that's true of pretty much everybody because everybody's a member of the cult. So, like, they're not going to try and get people to stop supporting the cult. They're not going to try and reduce donations.
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right. Well, on that level, is there anything specific that you want to plug that you're involved in that you think would benefit young activists, I guess would be a way of putting it. And we might be receiving some questions soon, but that's what I'm interested in is moving forward.
Well, you know, I know I've dropped it a couple times before, but the philosophy of agorism, the idea that we can create change by charity, building our own businesses, or competing with the government, or undermining the government by supporting alternative media, or supporting cryptocurrency, using silver, gold, whatever. Um, Undermining the government, this philosophy has really, it's given me new hope in this path, because I know many people who are probably new to this might share the same kind of feelings that I have had over the years, and that's of extreme helplessness, of like, how can we overcome this? Like, we're never going to do this, or we're never going to do that, or there's never going to be a politician that's going to come in and change it. You get like hopeless in that. But in this philosophy that you can change it, it replaces that hopelessness with imagination in a lot of ways. And of course, it's still a scary, daunting task, but it really does give you new hope to know that we can dismantle the system, piece by piece based on our skill set.
Right. Okay. So, and I like just to hammer the steam it point home, because I know you're involved in this project as well. Somebody started a project called hashtag Information War, and Information War is a hashtag on Steemit where people can use that tag to essentially post anti-MSM narrative posts, anti-government, basically anything that's truth and also trying to advance the liberty of the people, is welcome in that tag. They have a Discord community. They have a curation trail so that you can automatically upvote and be upvoted by other people, whether it be your comments or your posts. And I would advise everybody join that. What has been your experience with Information War so far?
I think, it's a lot of great people over there. I've been involved with the Discord community for maybe even a month or so now, maybe even longer. But it's just an awesome group from people of all backgrounds who kind of come together on the idea of free speech and alternative media. And I've connected with people from all over the world, and I've been able to get some different viewpoints too that I haven't that I'm not exposed to as often. Because even as much as I try not to be in an echo chamber, sometimes that just naturally happens. So it's really cool that there is a place where everybody could just kind of like be chill with each other and support each other's work, um, and really come together on the ideas of free speech and nonviolence.
Yeah, okay. And are there any other sorts of things that you would advise people do if they do join Steemit to start spreading their word?
Well, the first thing is you got to do a good introduction post that has a catchy title, letting people know your name, what you do, where are you from, in the subject line. That's pretty important. Getting involved with the Discord groups is important. The Minnow support group. There's another tag in addition to Information War called Family Protection that deals with CPS issues or government human trafficking, government pedophilia, issues like that can go in there, and those people are really cool as well. And yeah, the Discord though, especially, and also a lot of people don't realize this and how it works and all, but there is this system called there are people called witnesses that run the platform, and they get voted on, and every person gets a vote, and most people don't realize until way after they sign up that that you can vote on these people, but you're essentially voting on the Zuckerbergs of this website. You know what I'm saying? And you get like 30 votes in total, but it's pretty cool to look through and see the kind of people who have a philosophy that you identify with. And, you know, you could vote for the ones who you think will turn the or take the platform in a direction that you respect and everything. But yeah, I really recommend the Discord groups because that changed the game for me and really helped me realize how everything worked and got me connected with everybody in the community.
Well, very cool. All right. So, is there anything you want to plug before we end this broadcast?
Nah, just, you know, my Steam it at John Vibes. And, you know, I got a couple books out there that Manifesto of the Free Humans, Finding Freedom in an Age of Confusion, Conscious Resistance, Anarchy, and Spirituality, and Alchemy of the Timeless Renaissance. So that's about
Very
it.
cool. All right. Well, it was very good talking with you. There's going to be some post show after this, and yeah, everybody check out John Vibes at John Vibes. That's vibe as in like, you know, positive vibes Facebook pages. And you can find him also at the Free Thought Project, The Mind Unleashed, Brain Paper Publishing. That's the publishing group, right?
Yep.
And Good Vibes Promotions, I think it was, if I remember correctly. You can find him at all these places, and I hope you do. But be well, everybody. Remember, this is a culture war. This is a war of ideas. So educate your friends, family, neighbors, anybody that you care about, who you don't want to see their blood contribute to the rivers that run red when the elites finally decide to pull the plug on this shit show. Be well, everyone. I shall see you all probably later today, and maybe on Shit Shooting Sunday when we discuss non-government security. So have a good one.